Okay, picking up. I don't know if this is actually where we left off or not, but it's where we are going to pick up. Chapter 3, the Muster of Rohan. And page 795 is when Merry and Éowyn see each other and they talk because they're both upset that neither of them are going off to where they want to go off to. Éowyn because she doesn't get to go off with Aragorn, and Merry because he also kind of doesn't get to go off with Aragorn, but more importantly because he doesn't get to go off with Theoden. Okay, so we're going to skip a little bit. And the king tells Merry, page 801, that he can't come with him. But Éowyn does find some armor and such for him, page 802. Let's see here. And then on 804, the very last page of the chapter, Merry goes away unhappily from Theoden because Theoden has said, again, you can't come with me. And a rider comes up to Merry and speaks softly in his ear and says, "Where will once not, a way open, so we say, and so I have found myself." Kind of implying, I found a way to come along on this too. You wish to go whither the Lord of the Mart goes. I see it in your face. Merry, I do. Then you shall go with me. Merry, who are you? What's your name? Durnhelm. Hidden protector, as I said the other day. So, Merry now goes off with Durnhelm and Theoden. Okay, we go back to in chapter 4 the Siege of Gondor. So now we've seen Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli go off through the paths of the dead to Pelargir. Okay, we've seen Gandalf and Pippin go off to Minas Tirith. Now we see Merry go off with Theoden and Durnhelm. Frodo and Sam are still kicking around, at the Tower of Cirith Ungol, with being separated. So we get the Siege of Gondor, and I'm going to skip a bunch again. Faramir makes his way to Minas Tirith, and he sees Pippin. And Faramir says, top of page 811, "Whence come you, a halfling, and in the livery of the tower?" And Gandalf says, "Don't worry about him. We need to go onto the tower so you can talk to your father and such." Okay? And he tells the whole story of the meeting with Frodo and Sam. And what happened at Hineth Anun, the window on the west, what happened with Gollum, and where they were headed. The only thing he doesn't say is what? Oh, by the way, he had the Ring of Sauron. He doesn't let that part out, though Denethor does pick it up. Okay? So Gandalf, page 812, wants to know how long ago it was that Faramir parted from Sam and Frodo. It says, in the morning 2 days ago, 15 leagues, and Gandalf's thinking, okay, morning 2 days ago, he's doing some calculation. How far is the place where you parted? 25 leagues as a bird flies. Okay? And then he looks at his father, because he's been talking with Gandalf pretty much. And he says, "I hope I haven't done ill." "Ill? Why do you ask? The men were under your command, or do you ask for my judgment on all your deeds?" And then he lets slip, or not, could be entirely intentional, that Denethor thinks that Faramir is kind of under Gandalf's sway, under his power. "He has long had your heart in his keeping. My son, your father is old, but not yet dotard. I can see and hear as was my wont." He says, "Alas, alas for Boromir. Faramir, if what I've done displeases you," he says, "I wish I'd known your counsel before." Okay? Would that have changed your mind? Would that have availed to change your judgment? In other words, even if you had known what my counsel was before, would you have acted any differently? And from what we know about Faramir, would he have acted differently if he knew his father's counsel before? Would he have brought this thing to Minas Tirith? No. No. Okay? So, Faramir asks, top of 8:13. So you wish our places had been exchanged? You would rather I was dead and not Boromir? Yes. Okay, put yourself in Faramir's shoes at that point. Your father has just said he wishes you were dead and that your older brother was still alive. Why? For Boromir was loyal to me and no wizard's pupil. He would have remembered his father's need. He would have brought me a mighty gift. And Faramir says, remember, I was the one who should have gone. This is his way of telling Denethor, told you so. Okay? Stir not the bitterness in the cup that I mixed for myself. In other words, Denethor, this has been eating at him. The fact that he let Boromir go. Okay? Gandalf says, comfort yourself. Boromir would not have brought it to you. He's dead and he died well. May he sleep in peace. You deceive yourself. He would have stretched out his hand to this thing, and taking it, he would have fallen. He would have kept it for his own. Denethor just says, you only say that because Boromir wasn't pliable by you. You couldn't turn Boromir to your will. Gandalf says, okay, then what is your wisdom? That is, what would you do? And Denethor says, here's my wisdom. To perceive there are two follies to avoid. To use the thing is perilous. Notice, he doesn't know what the thing is. But to use it, he says, is perilous. What does he mean by perilous? It's fatal. It will bring about your demise. Okay? That's one thing. But the other thing that is foolish is to send it in the hands of an halfling into the enemy's land itself. You know, use the World War II metaphor. To put it in the hands of a midget and send it into Berlin just is not a smart thing to do. And what would you have done? Oh, great and wise Denethor. Okay, what would you have done? Neither. Oh, okay, so you're going to create a third choice out of whole cloth. Says, no, it should have been kept hidden, dark and deep. Hidden, dark and deep, where? In his little safety deposit box? Where someone would have the key and someone would know where it was? Set beyond his grasp. Where is beyond Sauron's grasp? Nowhere. Okay? So, Gandalf says, you think as is your wont, my lord, of Gondor only. Remember Gandalf's previous conversation with Denethor? Denethor's steward of Gondor, that little plot of land. What is Gandalf steward of? The whole thing. All of Middle-earth. Yet there are other men and other lives, and time still to be. Okay? Meaning, our, not Gandalf's personally, but Denethor's, children's, grandchildren's, great-grandchildren's, on down the line. And for me, I pity even his slaves. Now, what does Gandalf mean when he says, I pity Sauron's slaves? Does he mean he pities the orcs? Well, being as it's Gandalf, I think he does. Okay? Denethor, and where will other men look for help if Gondor falls? Denethor still thinks of Gondor as the bulwark. It's the only thing standing between Sauron and total slavery. If you do not trust me to endure the test, you do not know me yet. Gandalf, no, I don't trust you. But he doesn't stop there. I don't trust myself with this thing, he says. Even if it were buried under the mountain, he says, it would eat away at your thought. Okay? For a moment, the eyes of Denethor glowed again as he faced Gandalf, and Pippin felt once more the strain between their wills. But now almost it seemed as if their glances were like blades from eye to eye, flickering as they fenced. Thank God Peter Jackson, skipped over that passage. Pippin trembled, fearing some dreadful stroke. But suddenly Denethor relaxed and grew cold again. He shrugged his shoulders. If. Well, what's the problem with if? They're not real. Okay? So he asks Faramir, what about the garrison at Osgiliath? Is it going to be able to withstand? He goes, it's not strong. It'll hold for a while. Okay? Denethor says, you weary? Go get some food and drink. Okay? So Pippin asks Gandalf, is there any hope for Frodo? Gandalf, wasn't much, but Cirith Ungol, why? Why that? Why? Well, you didn't tell them any other way. Notice, what should they have done when they left Rivendell? Okay, Frodo, if anything happens to me, here is where I was planning on you going. But Gandalf's not assuming anything's going to happen to him. He doesn't even draw him a map. You know, X marks the spot. Here's where you need to get to. Okay? But he says, something has spurred Sauron on. He has begun sooner than he would. Something has happened to stir him. And he says, maybe you're foolish. That is, looking into the Palantir. And then he thinks, Aragorn. Aragorn, yeah, that's it. He's strong and stern underneath. Determined, able to take his own counsel, dare great risks. He may have used the stone and shown himself to the enemy, challenging him for this very purpose. I wonder. Well, you know, all I can do is wonder because I don't know for sure. So, the next day comes, and Faramir goes back before Denethor. And Faramir tells Denethor, bottom of page 816, since you're robbed of Boromir, I'll go and do what I can. In other words, I will go and fight and perform great deeds of glory. If you command it, I do. But if I should return, think better of me. I'll do what you want. But if I return, don't hold me in such low esteem. That depends on the manner of your return. What does Denethor mean? Yeah, I don't know that Tolkien has this in mind. I kind of think he probably does. But there's that old Spartan saying that Spartan wives would say to their husbands as they got ready to battle, return on your shield or with it. That is, be brought back dead from battle or come back carrying your shield. In other words, you cannot come back having lost, because either you die in battle or you win in victory. There is no coming back a coward. There is no coming back a slave. There is no coming back a loser. All right? And just before Faramir leaves, Gandalf kind of stops him, grabs him by the shoulder, and says, don't be foolish. Your father still loves you. He'll remember before the end. All right? So, the next day, the sky's getting blacker and blacker. The war isn't going well. Okay. And Faramir is brought in, wounded, ill, and let's see here. Where do I want to pick this up? Page 821 is when Faramir is brought in ill. The Nazgul come, and bottom of 823, Pippin tells Denethor not to weep, that, maybe Faramir will get well. Have you asked Gandalf? Maybe Gandalf can come and work some, wizard magic. And bottom of that page, Denethor says, the fool's hope has failed. He assumes that because it's gotten blacker than black outside, and because the Nazgul have come, Sauron now has the ring. The enemy has found it. Now his power waxes. He sees our very thoughts, and all we do is ruin us. All right? So, Gandalf takes command of the city, because what does Denethor do? He gives it up. In fact, he takes Faramir, page 825. He takes Faramir, and he's going to take him to the halls of the dead. Denethor says to his servants, "Why do the fools fly?" This is page 825. "Better to burn sooner than late, for burn we must. Go back to your bonfire, and I will go now to my pyre. To my pyre, no tomb for Denethor and Faramir. No tomb." In other words, light us up. Burn us alive. All right? He gives Pippin, leave to depart. And Pippin's like, this isn't good. And he runs off to find Gandalf. Okay. Now, what did Aragorn tell Éowyn? Do you remember when she asked, "Do I not have the right to spend my life as I choose?" And Aragorn said, "Few have such a right." Okay. She means, don't I have the right to end my life as I choose? Okay? And Aragorn says, few. Well, what is Denethor deciding to do here? He's going to end his life. He's going to end Faramir's life. Why? Because he doesn't want to just sit and wait. He doesn't want to endure what's going to come. He wants to go out on his own terms. Okay? So, Pippin runs off to find Gandalf, and before he does, he finds Baragon, and he sends Baragon up to Denethor. Keegan, did you have a question?
I was going to say, wouldn't that be like just the total escapism, just like running away from the situation?
Yeah, it'd be the flight of the deserter that Tolkien talks about in the fairy story essay. I mean, suicide is a way out, right? It's not the hero's way out. It's not the courageous way out. The courageous way out is to take whatever comes. Okay? So, Baragon goes to find Denethor. Pippin goes to find Gandalf, and he finally finds him. Bottom of 828, top of 829. The mighty gates to Minas Tirith that have never been breached before are now broken down, or they burst asunder. They're opened up because of the large battering ram. And we get this depiction on 829. In rode the Lord of the Nazgul. This is the captain of the Nine, the Witch King of Angmar. All right? Sauron's right-hand man. Well, former man. In rode the Lord of the Nazgul. A great black shape against the fires beyond he loomed up, grown to a vast menace of despair. In rode the Lord of the Nazgul, under the archway that no enemy ever yet had passed, and all fled before his face, all save one. There's Gandalf, sitting upon Shadowfax. Shadowfax not moving, not stomping his hooves, and Gandalf says, "You cannot enter here," and the huge shadow halts. Now, why does it halt? Because this isn't just some little frail old man going, you can't come in here, go around the other way. No. Go back to the abyss prepared for you. Go back. Fall into the nothingness that awaits you and your master. Go. In other words, Gandalf almost just kind of replays the tape that he played for the Balrog back at the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. The Black Rider flings back its hood, and behold, there's a crown, but there's nothing between the crown and the neck. The crown's just kind of floating. The red fire shone between it and the mantled shoulders, vast and dark. There's just flame here. Old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it? Die now and curse in vain. And with that he lifts high his sword, and flames ran down the blade. Now, die now and curse in vain is almost an exact lifting of a verse from the book of Job in the Old Testament. There's one word missing. And this is something Job's wife tells him. She says, die now and curse God in vain. Because, Job's kids have been destroyed. All of his wealth has been destroyed. His home's been destroyed. And he's sitting there, scraping his sores and wounds. And she says, die now, curse God in vain. And he says, yet though he slay me, I will believe him. Okay. And Gandalf doesn't move. Notice, Gandalf doesn't whip out his sword. He doesn't do some, Yoda jujitsu move where he jumps off his horse, flies through the air, and, does away with the Witch King of Angmar. He just sits there. And what happens? One of the oddest things in all the Lord of the Rings. Somewhere, off in some forgotten courtyard, some little hovel of Minas Tirith, a rooster crows. Why? What does the rooster think of all this that's going on? He doesn't. That's the significance. What's the rooster doing?
Alerting dawn.
The rooster's crowing because the sun's coming up. Does little orphan Annie tap dance in and start singing, the sun will come up tomorrow, the sun will always come up. In other words, everything's going to be okay? No. But what's the rooster show?
It's a new day.
It is a new day. What else?
It's like the light in the hall.
Yeah. What did Gandalf tell Denethor? If this night passes and tomorrow there is a single thing blooming, I will not have wholly failed. Well, the morning has come. And there's some damn rooster off in the distance, crowing. Showing not everything is going according to Sauron's plan. The rooster doesn't care about the Witch King of Angmar. The rooster is just acknowledging the sun has come up. It is a new day. It is a new beginning. And what do they hear after the rooster finishes crowing? The cavalry shows up. The good guys, the white hats, the whole night. Western films. Catastrophe. Okay? And as if in answer, far away another note, horns, horns, horns. Because what do the people of Minas Tirith think the people of Rohan are doing? They've ditched them. They sent the red arrow, which is the warning signal, and they haven't come. And finally they come. Rohan had come at last. And we jump back to the Ride of the Rohirrim. Okay? And we meet with Gonburi Gon and the Woesmen, the wild men. Okay. And Theoden sends Eomer out to lead the first Eored, that is the front rank. So Eomer will get the glory if they're successful, and he'll be screwed if they're screwed. Okay, he'll be the first to die. All right. And what happens? The Battle of the Pelanor Fields. First paragraph. The darkness was breaking tune before the date that his master had set for it. Fortune had betrayed him for the moment, and the world had turned against him. Okay, who's the him? It's not Sauron. It's the Witch King of Angmar, the Lord of the Nazgul. Victory was slipping from his grasp even as he stretched out his hand to seize it, but his arm was long. He was still in command. King, Ringwraith, Lord of the Nazgul, he had many weapons. So what does he do? He has to leave Minas Tirith. He was hoping to march into victory. Theoden's out there, and Theoden becomes aware of the Lord of the Nazgul. But saying isn't Shadowfax. So when the Lord of the Nazgul arrives, Snowmane rears up on his hind legs and falls falls on Theoden. Now keep in mind, Theoden's not, Schwarzenegger. He's not a young 20-year-old who can push the horse off him. So when the horse falls on him, he breaks his legs. Plus he's pinned under him. And we get page 840. The great shadow descended like a falling cloud. And it was a dragon. It's not a dragon. And Nazgul comes down, and we're told, but Theoden was not utterly forsaken. The knights of his house lay slain about him, or, mastered by the madness of their steeds, were borne far away. But one, Durnhelm the Young. Merry had seen all this. And Merry thinks to himself, Kingsman, you must as a father you shall be to me. But his will made no answer. In other words, he tells himself this. He's saying, legs, move. And his legs are going, hell no. I'm staying right here so that my legs stay attached to my body and blood keeps flowing through them. Okay? Blackness he hears. Begone, foul Dwemer Lord of Carrion, leave the dead in peace. And a cold voice answers, come now, Nazgul and his prey, or he will not slay thee in thy turn. He will bear thee away to the houses of lamentation beyond all darkness, where thy flesh shall be devoured, shriveled mind be left naked to the lidless eye. Nice little depiction maybe of hell. Word rings out. Do what you will, but I will hinder it if I may. Hinder me, thou fool? No living man may hinder me. Surprise! Not a man, just a cross-dresser. Eowyn. And Merry heard of all hour the strangest. It seemed that Durnhelm laughed, and the clear voice was like the ring of steel. No living man am I. You look upon a woman. Eowyn's daughter, you stand between me and my lord, and kin, begone if you be not deathless, for living or dark or dead, I will smite you if you touch him. The ring made no answer, and was silent as if in sudden doubt. Why? Because I think he's literally trying to figure out, what does the prophecy say? Is it no living man, meaning the male gender being, or is it no living man, meaning human being? Because if it's no living human being, I don't have anything to worry about. If it is, however, no living man, could be a dicey situation. What do I do at this point? Okay. Merry opens his eyes and he sees little old Eowyn standing up, holding her sword against this great big Eowyn it was, and Durnhelm also. For into Merry's mind flashed the memory of the face he saw at the riding from Dunharrow, the face of one that goes seeking death, having no hope. May I not spend my life as I please? It's like she was looking for this opportunity. And pity fills his heart in great wonder, and suddenly the slow kindled courage of his race awoke. In other words, you don't want to anger a hobbit. They might be little, but when they get going, you can't stop them. And he clenched his hand, and he thinks she should not die, so fair, so desperate, at least not alone. So what does Merry do? He crawls his way. And the great beast beat its hideous wings. The wind of them was foul. It leaped in the air, swiftly fell down upon Eowyn, shrieking, striking with beak and claw. And what does she do? She doesn't even flinch. She deals a swift stroke and chops its head off. She clove asunder the head, and the hewn head fell like a stone. Okay, now she really angered the Black Rider because she killed his horsey. His air horsey, if you want. He bent over her like a cloud. His eyes glittered. He raised his mace to kill. Think of that line. He bent over her like a cloud. Okay. He has the shape of a man. He doesn't, suddenly fill the whole sky. But like a cloud, meaning what?
Blocks out the sunlight.
Blocks out the sunlight, or if you've seen a tornado coming, it looks what? Menacing. If you've literally been out in the field and watched a severe thunderstorm build and move towards you, it's kind of like, well, that's getting close. I should probably leave now. Okay? That's what that passage means. So that when he raises himself menacing like a cloud, it's like all hell is about to break loose. Where? Right on little Eowyn. But suddenly he too stumbled forward with a cry of bitter pain, and his stroke went wide, driving into the ground. Merry's sword had stabbed him from behind, shearing through the black mantle, passing up beneath the hauberk, had pierced the sinew behind his mighty knee. Here's a question for you. He's a shade. He's a wraith. How does he have sinew behind his knee? After all, what do you see when he pulls his hood back? Flame. So Merry stabs him behind the knee. And what does he do? He falls. Why? Because it's a blade of Numenor that was forged specifically to fight against the Witch King of Angmar and his forces. Okay? And Eowyn, Merry cries out, Eowyn, Eowyn! And, struggling up with her last strength, she drove her sword between crown and mantle as the great shoulders bowed before her. Because where is she? She's on her knees. She has fallen. She has a broken arm at this point. All right? And she shoves that sword up as far as it can go between the crown and shoulder. The crown rolls away. And what happens to the cloak? It falls to the ground. There's nothing there. All right? Okay, now why else does Merry's strike hurt? No living man am I. He's a hobbit. He's not a human being. Okay? And there stood Meriadoc the hobbit in the midst of the slain, blinking like an owl in the daylight, for tears blinded him. He sees Eowyn's fair head. She falls, etc. Theoden is awake. He's not dead. He's mostly dead. My body is broken. I go to my father's. I felled the black serpent. Well, not really. And notice Merry doesn't say, oh, no, you didn't. It was your niece. You didn't actually do it. Failure. Okay. But notice Theoden is not aware that Eowyn is there at all. Send word to Eowyn. I would send word to Eowyn. She would not have me leave her. Now I shall not see her again. Merry goes, Lord, what? And he dies. Okay? Merry's thinking, where's Gandalf? Couldn't he have saved Eowyn? And so what happens? Eomer just goes crazy. I mean, the berserker attitude sets in on him. So he's killing people left and right. Probably some of his own. Who knows? Okay? And so Eowyn gets brought into Minas Tirith, kind of in honor. Theoden gets brought into Minas Tirith in honor. Okay? Eomer is not wounded. What about Merry? He walks in. Nobody even notices him. Until Pippin sees him. And then we get page 846. The battle's going pretty good now because the Black King, the Dark Lord's been killed. Not the Dark Lord, but the sub-Dark Lord, as it were, has been killed. And then suddenly they see off in the distance on the river. That's right. They see these ships come up. And what do? They unfurl the pennants. Because when the ships come up, the ships have black sails. And they're like, the Corsairs of Umber, the black Corsairs of Umber. These are like, Jolly Rogers. And they're like, oh, great. Now we have the pirates to deal with. Until a new pennant, a new flag is flown. And it's the White Tree of Gondor. Well, how does that happen? Because only one person can fly the White Tree of Gondor. Only the king, not the steward. Well, who has the brass to be flying The flag of Gondor, then. Must be the future king. All right? And we're told, page 847 at the bottom, thus came Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Elisar, Isildur's heir, out, notice the build-up, out of the paths of the dead, born upon a wind from the sea to the kingdom of Gondor, blah, blah, blah. In other words, he's like a god coming from the sea to rescue the people. Okay? Elmer and Aragorn meet again, and we get chapter 7, the Pyre of Denethor. After the Witch King of Angmar leaves, Pippin runs up, grabs on, Gandalf's cloak, and is like, Mr. Gandalf, Mr. Gandalf, Denethor's about to kill Faramir. And Gandalf's like, oh, great. Just, one more thing. So they go up and they find Denethor. And Gandalf asks Denethor, page 854, what would you have if your will could have its way? If you could command that all things would go according to your will, what would you want? Okay, tell me. Denethor, I would have things as they were in all the days of my life. In other words, I would be steward. Boromir would be alive, sitting at my right hand. Faramir would be sitting at my left hand. And we would have peace. And people would leave us alone, and we'd leave them alone. And in the days of my long forefathers before me, to be the Lord of the city in peace. And he says, but if doom denies this to me, then I will have naught, nothing, neither life diminished. Well, how can his life be diminished? He doesn't mean dead. Where I don't have power, where I don't have authority, nor love halved, meaning half of my love gone, Boromir, nor honor abated. To me, it would not seem that a steward who faithfully surrenders his charge is diminished in love or in honor. Okay? You won't be loved less because you're steward. And if at the least you shall not rob your son of his choice while his death is still in doubt. Denethor, you'd already stolen half my son's love. Now you steal the love of my knights, that is Baragond. Okay? What does he do? He leaps up on the table, ready for the fire, and he shows the Palantir of Minas Tirith, okay, which he'd been looking into. Because Denethor thought he could command the Palantir. But instead, what does he see? He sees what Sauron wants him to see. Okay? Gandalf's going to explain later. You cannot make the Palantir lie. That is, Sauron cannot make the Palantir show Denethor something that is not true. But what can he do? He can make the Palantir show Denethor how big his army is. Well, how big is his army? It's huge. It's millions. All right? So, Denethor sees that and he assumes, we cannot win. Okay? So, Gandalf rescues Faramir, and they take him to the houses of healing, and they take Eowyn to the houses of healing. Okay? Merry goes to the houses of healing. So, page 861. They're trying to figure out how to heal everybody. And Yorith, okay, this old woman, this old healer, whispers to Gandalf and says, if only the king were here. Because it's said that the hands of the king are the hands of a healer. And Gandalf, slaps himself on the forehead and says, duh. Somebody go get Aragorn. Okay. And Aragorn gets ready to come in the city, and they're like, are you going to proclaim yourself? Are you going to have people say, make way for the king, Hosanna in the highest, that kind of language? He goes, no. Just tell him the ranger, Strider, is making his way north. The captain of the rangers, okay? And what does he do? He commands that his banner should be furled. He doesn't need the people of Minas Tirith seeing it. And he did off the Star of the North Kingdom. That is, this little crown-like thing he's wearing, Elisar. He takes that off and kind of slips it in his purse. No. And he goes in dressed as a bum, essentially. And he makes his way in, and he asks for Athelas, which is a kind of herb. And she says, well, it's king's foil, but nobody uses that. I mean, there might be some somewhere, but we don't use it. And he says, go find it. Okay? And so they bring him the Athelas, and Aragorn takes it, he breaks it, puts it in boiling water, and page 865, he puts it into the steaming water, and he kind of cleans Faramir's face with it. We're told, top of 866, suddenly Faramir stirred, and he opened his eyes, and he looked on Aragorn. And a light of knowledge and love was kindled in his eyes, and he spoke softly, my lord, you called me, I come. What does the king command? Now, do we get Aragorn saying, psst, Faramir, wake up, it is I, the king, returned from, lo, these 3,000 years, and I call you, come forth, Faramir. No. He breaks the herb into the steaming water, he gets a wash rag, he steeps it in it, and he wipes Faramir's forehead, and Faramir comes out of his sleep. What does the king command? Walk no more in the shadows, but awake. You are weary, rest a while, take food, be ready when I return. 3,000 years from now. I will, Lord, for who would lie idle when the king has returned? Yorith. Did you hear that? The king, what did I say? And what does she do? She pulls out her cell phone and, it makes the rounds through Minas Tirith. The king is returned. So Aragorn then goes to Éowyn and says, here's a grievous hurt and a heavy blow. The arm that was broken has been tended with due skill. That is, it'll be fine. But the chief evil comes through the sword arm. That is, the arm she used to kill the Ringwraith. There's no life there. It's just kind of like Harry Potter when, Gilderoy Lockhart removes his bones. It just kind of hangs there limp. Alas, she was pitted against the foe beyond the strength of her mind or body. Those who will take a weapon to such an enemy must be sterner than steel, if the very shock shall not destroy them. It was an evil doom that set her in his path. What does he mean by doom? Judgment. Choice. Okay? And yet I know not how I should speak of her. When I first looked on her and perceived her unhappiness, it seemed to me that I saw a white flower standing straight and proud, shaped as a lily, shapely as a lily. She's pretty hot. And yet knew that it was hard. She's cold, as if wrought of steel. He says, her malady begins a long time ago. Am I right, Éomer? He goes, don't ask me. She seemed fine until she first saw you, Aragorn. Okay. 867. Gandalf is speaking. Think you that Wormtongue had poison only for Theoden's ears? Dotard, what is the house of Eorl but a thatched barn? Drink in the reek, and their brats roll on the floor among their dogs? That's what Saruman said. Have you not heard those words before? I do not doubt them, wrap their meaning in terms more cunning. My lord, if your sister's love for you, and her will, still bent to her duty, had not restrained her lips, you might have heard even such things as escaped them. But who knows what she spoke to the darkness, alone, in the bitter watches of the night? When the walls of her bower closing in about her, a hutch to trammel some wild thing in. What was it when she told Aragorn she was afraid of a cage? Who wanted to marry her? Wormtongue. Now, for most, that would be a cage. Okay, that would be horrible. Éomer doesn't say anything. And Aragorn says, I saw what you saw too. Because I saw that when she saw me, she kind of went thumpity, thumpity, thump. She fell in love. So Aragorn calls her. He says, maybe the power to heal her body and to recall her from the dark valley, but to what she'll awake, hope or forgetfulness, despair, I don't know. It's almost like he's saying, should I wake her up? What if I wake her to despair? So he says, Eowyn, Eowyn's daughter, awake, for your enemy has passed away. And she begins to breathe deeply. Okay? Awake, Eowyn, Lady of Rohan. Right hand, he feels it warm with life returning. Awake, the shadow is gone, and all darkness is washed clean. And then he puts her hand in Eomer's and says, call. Okay? And she wakes up and they talk about Theoden and such. And then Gandalf and Pippin go to Merry's room. And there they find Aragorn standing by the bed, and Pippin's, poor old Merry, he's dead, But Aragorn says, don't worry, he's fine. I came in time. I called him back. He's weary now. Aragorn puts his hand on Merry's head. Merry wakes, and what's he do? Very first thing, I'm hungry. Okay, he's a hobbit. And then what's almost the very next thing? And I need a pipe. I'm hungry, and I need to smoke. Okay? So he asks Aragorn if he has any pipe weed. And Aragorn's like, I've not passed through death, to get you pipe weed. But he's joking that because he sees right on the other side of Merry his pack with his pipe and his weed hanging out of it. Okay? So, Merry then says, no, I'll never smoke again. Because I was supposed to smoke with Theoden in Aedoras. And Aragorn says, all the more reason to smoke. So every time you take a puff, think of Theoden. In other words, your smoking will be a memorial to Theoden. Now that's a wise guy. Now you just gotta love, he should have added, and drink a beer while you're at it. Because what else is there to do in life but drinking? Okay, so, chapter 9, the last debate. Legolas and Gimli are talking about the tower and all that kind of stuff. And Aragorn relates what happened, how they went through the paths of the dead and all that kind of stuff. And I want to pick up on page 878. We have the actual last debate, and it occurs outside the city. Aragorn still hasn't come in claiming the kingship. He's just, set up outside. And Gandalf tells them, my lords, listen to the words of the steward of Gondor before he died. You may triumph on the fields of the Pelanor for a day, but against the power that has now arisen, there is no victory. I do not bid you despair as he did, but to ponder the truth in these words. In other words, he despaired having these words. Gandalf says, I don't want you to despair, but there's truth in these words. The stones of seeing do not lie. The Lord of Barad-dûr, that is Sauron, can maybe by his will choose what things shall be seen by weaker minds, or cause them to mistake the meaning of what they see. But don't doubt, Denethor saw great forces arrayed against him in Mordor. He saw that which truly is. Hardly has our strength sufficed to beat off the first great assault. In other words, we barely got through this battle. Okay? The next battle will be even greater. If we barely made it through this one, what's the likelihood we'll make it through the next one? This war, then, is without final hope, as Denethor perceived. Okay? The war is without final hope. Victory cannot be achieved by arms. Whether you sit here to endure siege after siege or march out to be overwhelmed beyond the river. Notice the choices. You can sit or you can march out to battle. Either way, we cannot win by force of arms. We cannot win by having the most tanks, having the most aircraft, having the most aircraft carriers, having the biggest army, having the most guns. Okay? You have only a choice of evils. And this is supposed to be a pep talk. This is supposed to be the psyching them up before the big game speech. Prudence would counsel you to strengthen such strong places as you have, and there await the onset. Prudence, wisdom, would say, harden your defenses and wait for the battle to come to you. Okay, Imrahil says, then you'd have us retreat to Minas Tirith or Dol Amroth or Dunharrow and sit there like children on sandcastles when the tide is flowing. Such a beautiful image. You would have us sit like children behind sandcastles. Well, what happens to every sandcastle once the tide comes in? Whoosh, it's washed away. What would our defenses do? They would merely break before the onslaught. Well, where's the wisdom in that? Okay? Gandalf, that would be no new counsel. Why? Because that's what you've been doing. Okay? He says, no. I said that would be prudent. That's what the wisdom, let me throw in a phrase, of this world would say to do. But I do not counsel prudence. I said victory could not be achieved by arms. I still hope for victory. Okay? I hope for victory, but not by arms. Not a military victory. For into the midst of all these policies comes the ring of power, the foundation of Barad-dûr, and the hope of Sauron. Oh, so now they're speaking openly about the ring of power. So he says, now you all know enough to understand our plight and Sauron's. If he gets the ring of power back, we're screwed. That's it. If he gets it back, he says, your valor is vain. You will die for no purpose, and his victory will be swift and complete. If it is destroyed, if the ring is destroyed, then he will fall, and his fall will be so low that none can foresee his arising ever again. Why? He'll lose the best part of the strength that was native to him in his beginning. That is, he will lose the best part of his strength that was created in him when he was created. He poured most of his being into the very ring. You destroy the ring, you destroy the majority of his being, in other words. And he will be maimed forever, becoming a mere spirit of malice that gnaws itself in the shadows but cannot again grow or take shape. And so a great evil of this world will be removed. Notice what Tolkien does not say. And so evil in this world will be removed. No. A great evil. Doesn't mean there aren't other great evils. Other evils there are that may come. Notice the language there. There are other evils that may come, or they may not come. For Sauron is himself but a servant or emissary. Somebody asked me the other day, does that mean he's merely a servant or emissary of Morgoth? Well, yeah, he was the servant of Morgoth. But he's not talking about Morgoth there. He's talking about Sauron is himself a servant or emissary of evil writ large. Of the mere idea, let's say, of evil. Yet it is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. In other words, it's not our job to solve the problems of the future. What is our job? To solve the problems of today. What are the problems of today? Let's do a little applicability. What is the problem confronting? And let's limit it to the United States. What are problems confronting the United States right now? Not 10 years down the road, not 20 years down the road. Okay? How about the economy? That's a problem. How about jobs? How many of you don't have a job and you're looking for one? I bet some of you do. Okay? Because your age group is the most screwed of all the age groups of people looking for jobs. 25%, I think, it is of those 18 to 30 are unemployed. Unemployed, not underemployed. 52% of all graduates last year had no job upon graduating from college. Okay, that is a problem. Well, those are maybe not major problems. How about problems of hunger? That's a problem. Is it a perennial problem? Yes. Does that mean, therefore, that we go, well, no problem with it then? Okay. There are more people hungry today than there were 4 years ago in the United States. More people, on food stamps, on government, all that kind of stuff, right? So Gandalf is talking about, let's try to solve the problem of today. In their world, what's the problem of today? Sauron. Bin Laden was, up until a couple of years ago, okay? But trying to get rid of evil is ludicrous. So focus on the problem at hand, he seems to be saying. So Sauron knows all this. He knows that this precious thing which he lost has been found again, but he doesn't know where it is. And he knows there are some among us who are strong enough to wield it, like Gandalf, and Elrond, and Galadriel, and Celeborn, and Círdan the Shipwright, and probably Glorfindel, and Aragorn probably. For do I not guess rightly, Aragorn, you've shown yourself to him in the Stone of Orthanc? Aragorn, yep. Before we left the Hornburg. In other words, before we went through the paths of the dead. I deemed that the time was ripe, that the stone had come to me for just such a purpose. Okay? He says, and I thought Sauron needed to be challenged. Too seldom has he been challenged since he returned to his tower. Though if I had foreseen how swift would be his onset and answer, maybe I would have waited a little bit. So, what do you think Sauron sees when he looks in the Palantir and suddenly sees Aragorn? Does he see Strider from the north? What does he see? I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn. Elisar, Elfstone, Eladin, heir of Isildur, Elendil's son. And I have the sword that was broken and is forged again. Remember this? Remember this? I'm back. So you have to imagine Sauron kind of like, okay. So what does that mean when Aragorn says, too seldom has he been challenged? What did Gandalf say Sauron could do with the Seeing Stone? He could force Denethor to see what he wants Denethor to see. Who had mastery over the Seeing Stone? Aragorn or Sauron? Well, I think the correct answer goes back to who has the proper ownership. Aragorn, not Sauron. Okay? So, they keep talking. And Gandalf finally says, top of 880, his doubt will be growing even as we speak here. His eye is now straining towards us, blind almost to all else that is moving. We must keep it. In other words, looking outward. We have not the ring, and wisdom or great folly has been sent away to be destroyed. We cannot achieve victory by arms, but by arms we can give the ring bearer his only chance, frail though it be. As Aragorn has begun, so we must go on. So what do? We force Sauron's hand. How? We march up to the Black Gate and knock on the door. And we say, Sauron, come fight us. Dirty, rotten, no good. We challenge him, because what will he assume? They have it. One of them has gotten a little too full of himself and now challenges me in open combat. that will cause Sauron to send all of his forces out. Well, where do his forces come from? Go back to the map for a moment. Okay. Go to this map here, and here you have the Dark Tower, Barad-dûr, all right? And here is Mount Doom, Orodruin, the Mountain of Fire. And way up here is the Morannon, the Black Gate. So what they're going to do is they're going to amass their forces up here at the Morannon, turning Sauron's attention from here to here, because they don't want his attention being right here. Okay, so he sends all of his forces up this way. Now, when Frodo and Sam come into Mordor, they come in right here, this way. Okay, they start up here, and then they make their way all the way down to Minas Ithil. So they come all the way down here, and then they have to come back this way. So, he says, Gandalf does, we must walk open-eyed into that trap with courage, but small hope for ourselves. For, my lords, it may well prove that we ourselves shall perish utterly in a black battle far from the living lands, so that even if Barad-dûr be thrown down, we shall not live to see a new age. We might die, and Frodo still achieve the quest. And we'll never know. But this, I deem, is our duty. It's our obligation, he is saying. To what? To offer ourselves as a sacrifice so that Frodo might be able to achieve the quest. And better so than to perish nonetheless. Okay, notice what Gandalf is saying here. Either way, we die. Unless the ring is achieved, the quest is achieved, and we don't die then. But we can sit here and wait, in which case we know Sauron will win. Or we can go out and we could try to divert his attention to give Frodo the slightest chance of achieving the quest. And we'll probably die in that. But if we just sit here and wait, how do we die? Essentially cowards. If we go out and we take him on, we go out like warriors. We go out fighting, in other words. Is it suicide? No. Because when they do that, are they doing that with absolutely no hope whatsoever? No. There is still a glimmer of hope. How much is a glimmer? 1/1000th? 1/1,000,000th? I don't know. It's not much. Okay? But he says, if we sit here and wait, then there will not be a new age. If we go out, there might be. So they're silent for a while. And Aragorn says, as I have begun, so I will go on. We have come now to the very brink where hope and despair are akin. Think of that. We've come to the very brink. Well, what's the brink mean? It's the edge of an abyss where hope and despair, he says, are akin. They're like twins. And it all depends on how you look at them. Because what can be seen as hope can be seen despairing by others. And what can be seen as despair can be seen as a glimmer of hope by others. Okay? Amber's like, I don't know, I'll just follow Aragorn because he's pretty cool and, you know. So what do? They decide to go off and to challenge Sauron. How many go? Well, thousands. We get an actual number somewhere. I don't remember what it is. It's like 10,000 total. And they make their way to the Black Gate. And what do as they go? They have a herald go out in front of them with a trumpet. And he goes, you know, Lord Aragorn, King of the West, mighty of the mighty, wonderful of the wonderful, claims all this land for himself in Gondor, essentially. And they get to the Morannon, and the mouth of Sauron comes out, the ambassador, as it were. And he's got some things. And he challenges them. And he says, you can't deal with me, talking to Aragorn, you ranger of the north. You're not high enough. And he says, nor really can you, Gandalf. You stick your nose in things too big for you. Page 889. And he says, so, you recognize these things? And what does he hold up? Frodo's mithril coat. And it's pretty recognizable. Nobody else has one of those. What else? A couple of elven cloaks. They know where those came from. Okay? And Pippin goes, ah! Silence! Fool of a took, next time throw yourself, And the lieutenant of Sauron says, so you do recognize these, and the people who wore them were close to you. Well, good, because you know that we have them, and Sauron will deal with them presently. Okay? And Gandalf's like, okay, name your terms. What are the terms of surrender? And he gives the terms. And Gandalf essentially says, like hell, runs up, goes up to him, takes the things from him, and the mouth of Sauron falls back. Oh, I'm an ambassador. You can't touch me. Diplomatic immunity. That's essentially what he's calling diplomatic immunity. And Gandalf says, page, where is it? Bottom of 890. These we will take, cast aside his cloak, his white light shone forth. And he says, these will take in memory of our friend, but as for your terms, we reject them utterly, get you gone, for your embassy is over and death is near to you. We did not come here to waste words in treating with Sauron, faithless and accursed, still less with one of his slaves. The drums start to beat, the black gate opens, and what happens? Like maggots and vermin, cockroaches, the forces of Sauron come out and just overwhelm them. Of course, you do have Gandalf standing out there with Glamdring and his staff, bzz, bzz, zapping people, etc. Aragorn's, doing Numenorian jujitsu on everybody. And what's Pippin doing? Yay! Got my little sword, and he falls under a troll. And what does he hear? The eagles are coming. The eagles are coming. Bottom, top of 893. He's like, wait, no, that's not the right story. That's the Hobbit. That's Bilbo's story. But he keeps hearing, the eagles are coming. The eagles are coming. And we go to book 6, the Tower of Terror. We go all the way back now to Sam being outside the locked door thinking, what an hammer I am. And we don't know what's happening outside the black gates of Mordor. So Sam has to figure out a way now to rescue Frodo. But he doesn't really. So, what are we told? Sam puts on the ring, page 900. His thought turned to the ring, but there was no comfort there, only in danger. So he puts on the ring because it became more fell and tameable save by some mighty will. As Sam stood there, even though the ring was not on him, but hanging by its chain about his neck, he felt himself enlarged, as if he were robed in a huge distorted shadow of himself. Now, keep in mind, he's not wearing it. He's got it on its ring, on its chain, around his neck. A vast and ominous threat halted upon the walls of Mordor. He felt that he had on only two choices, to forbear the ring, though it would torment him, or to claim it and challenge the power that sat in the dark. And what happens? He starts to have fantasies. No, not those kinds of fantasies. Wild fantasies arose in his mind, and he saw Samwise the Strong, hero of the age, striding with a flaming sword across the darkened land, armies flocking to his call. He overthrows Barad-dûr, and what does he do? The of Gorgoroth becomes a garden of flowers and trees and fruit. He had only to put on the ring and claim it his own. Notice, there's two aspects there. He's got to put on the ring, but then he has to say, I, Samwise Gamgee, son of Hamfast, claim this ring. I am the dark power, And in that hour of trial, it was the love that helped most to hold him firm. But also deep down in him lived still unconquered his plain hobbit sense. Well, what's his plain hobbit sense? That he knew in the core of his heart he could not bear such a burden. And even if he could, the one small garden of a free gardener was all his need and due. It's all he wanted. Just a little garden. Go to England, go to London, go to almost any house in London, and if they have a garden, if they have a yard, it's no bigger. Okay? I mean, I've seen many yards, I'm not kidding, that are this big, and they buy mowers to mow those things. Not riding mowers, fortunately, And that's it. That's what Tolkien is talking about. That's all Sam wants. Enough for a person to turn and till with a spade. Not even a powered rototiller or anything like that. Sam, and anyway, all only a trick. He'd spot me and cow me before I could so much as shout out. Spot me pretty quick if I put the ring on now in Mordor. So what? He doesn't know what to do. So he makes his way down the path. Okay. He goes past the Watchers. And he goes on. And he overhears a couple of orcs fighting. And what he comes to find out is the orcs have all killed each other. That's nice. And he starts to sing. Sam does. And then he hears a little reply. After he hears an orc say, "Hey, you up there, you dung rat, stop your squeaking or I'll come and deal with you. Okay? So Sam does it again. And finally he goes and he finds Frodo and he rescues him. And he says, "Don't worry, I've got it. I've got the ring." And what does Frodo do? "Give it to me, it's my precious, mate." He kind of Gollumizes on us. All right? So, they dress as orcs and they leave. And they go into the land of shadow. Now, Sam has worn the ring prior to this. He has put the ring on. So he knows the effect of the ring. So they go into the land of shadow, and page 918. We're told at the bottom of the page, Sam is talking with Frodo, and he says, we need some water, and we need some light. We could use some real light. Okay? And Sam says, "There now, Mr. Frodo, it's you that's talking of water this time. If only the lady could see us, hear us, I'd say to her, your ladyship, all we want is light and water. Just clean water and plain daylight, better than any jewels, begging your pardon. But it's a long way to Lorien." So Sam's talking about we need light and water. And suddenly they realize there's a black rider over them, and they crouch and hide under a boulder. And then Frodo realizes, okay, it's past. And they stood up. And then they stare and wonder. Because away to their left, southward, against a sky that was turning gray, the peaks and high ridges of the great range began to appear dark and black, visible shapes. In other words, they could see them now. They couldn't see them before. Everything was pitch black. Light was growing behind them. That is, light is coming from the south and west. Slowly it crept towards the north. There was battle far above in the high spaces of the air. The eagles are coming. The eagles are coming. Okay? The billowing clouds of Mordor were being driven back, their edges tattering as a wind out of the living world came up and swept the fumes and smokes towards the dark land of their home. Under the lifting skirts of the dreary canopy, dim light leaked into Mordor like pale morning through the grimed window of a prison. And Sam says, "Look at it, Mr. Frodo. Look at it. The wind's changed. Something's happening. He's not having it all his own way. His darkness is breaking up out in the world there. I wish I could see what it is going on." Okay? They're inside Mordor, and light starts to stream into Mordor. And we're told it's the morning of the 15th of March. And over the Vale of Anduin, the sun was rising above the eastern shadow, and the southwest wind was blowing. Theoden lay dying on the Pelanor fields. The Lord of the Ring Wraiths had met his doom. So, the Lord of the Ring Wraith's doom causes some of the shadow to lift. What does Sauron realize? Yikes. Not going so well. Sam says, "What did I tell you? Something's happening. The war's going well. Things are looking up, Mr. Frodo. Haven't you got some hope now?" "No, not much, Sam." "Come on, Frodo, quit being such a downer." I mean, they get light. Sam had just been asking about, all we need is some light and water. They get light, and then what happens? Very next page. They hear a little tinkling, and it's water. Eucatastrophe? Yes. Can you ever expect that to happen again in Mordor? No. Okay. So they drink some water, and Sam says, "Let me drink it first because this is poisonous, then I'll die, and you can go on." So finally, they keep making their way. You got just a couple minutes. I think we'll go ahead and stop, and we'll pick up on Tuesday. We'll pick up probably with chapter 3.